What would you do if someone judged you by your clothes before even hearing your name? In today's powerful story,
Spain.
a bank manager laughs at a man with an overdrawn account after he says, "I'll pay you double if you have a balance." But what the manager doesn't know is that the quiet customer standing in front of him is actually the CEO of the entire bank. What happens next will teach everyone in the branch a life-changing lesson about respect, humility, and never judging a person by their appearance. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Now, grab your favorite drink, sit back, relax, and let's get started. The Friday afternoon rush had turned First National Bank of Chicago into a whirlwind of activity. Customers packed the marble-floored lobby, some checking their watches impatiently, while others sighed as the line barely moved. Every teller window was occupied, printers hummed continuously, and phones rang behind the counter. Employees hurried from one customer to another, trying to keep the growing crowd under control. Near the back of the line stood a man who looked completely out of place. He wore faded blue jeans, dusty work boots, and a worn denim jacket with frayed cuffs. His baseball cap had clearly seen better days, and a week's worth of beard covered his face. He carried no expensive briefcase or designer watch, only a weathered brown envelope tucked under one arm. To most people, he looked like a construction worker who had stopped by after a long shift. Several customers glanced at him before quickly looking away. A woman whispered to her husband, "He probably needs to cash his paycheck." Another man quietly moved his expensive leather bag a little farther away. Assuming the stranger didn't belong in such a prestigious downtown bank, the man noticed the stares but didn't react. Instead, he patiently waited his turn, occasionally smiling at a little girl standing with her mother nearby. The child smiled back, but her mother gently pulled her closer. Judging the stranger by his appearance, nearly 20 minutes later, the teller finally called him forward. "Good afternoon, sir," the young teller said politely. "How may I help you today?" The man placed the thick envelope on the counter. "I'd like to make a deposit." The teller opened the envelope and immediately raised her eyebrows. Inside were neatly stacked bundles of cash secured with bank straps. She carefully counted every bill while the customer waited quietly. When she finished, her computer displayed a notification. "I'm sorry, sir," she said hesitantly. "Your account currently has a negative balance of $2,700. Bank policy requires us to deduct that amount from today's deposit." The man gave a calm nod. "That's perfectly fine." His relaxed response surprised the teller. Most customers argued when they heard their account was overdrawn, but this man didn't seem bothered in the slightest. Standing a few feet away, the branch manager overheard the conversation. Richard Collins prided himself on running the busiest branch in the city. Dressed in a tailored navy suit with a polished silver tie clip, he believed appearances revealed everything about a customer. Seeing the man's worn clothes, he assumed he was dealing with someone financially irresponsible. The manager walked over with a confident smile that barely concealed his arrogance. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. The teller explained the overdraft situation. Richard looked at the customer and smirked. "So your account is overdrawn?" he asked loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. The man answered calmly, "It happens." The manager chuckled. "It should focus on getting your balance positive before making promises." The customer looked directly into his eyes and replied in an even tone, "I'll pay you double if you have a balance." For a second, the lobby fell silent. Then Richard burst into laughter. Several customers joined in. Assuming the stranger had made a foolish joke, "You'll pay us double," Richard said between laughs. "Do you even understand how bank balances work? Your account is negative. Frankly, you should be grateful we're still willing to do business with you." The teller looked uncomfortable. She could tell the customer wasn't offended, but the manager's behavior was becoming embarrassing. The man simply smiled. "I understand balances better than you think." Richard folded his arms confidently. "Oh, really? Then prove it." Without saying another word, the customer slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black smartphone. He unlocked it with a fingerprint, opened a secure banking application, and entered a few credentials. He then turned the screen toward the teller. Her eyes widened almost instantly. She looked at the display once, then twice, making sure she wasn't mistaken. The color drained from her face. Richard noticed her expression and leaned closer. Still wearing a smug grin, the grin disappeared the moment he read the name displayed at the top of the screen. His heart skipped a beat. The account belonged not to an ordinary customer, but to the man who served as the chief executive officer of the entire banking corporation, the person with the authority to appoint, promote, or dismiss every branch manager across the country. The crowded lobby had no idea what had just happened, but Richard Collins suddenly realized his career might have ended in the span of a single conversation. The CEO then walked toward the young father, holding his sleeping daughter. "I'm sorry, you had to wait." The father smiled. "It's all right." "No," the CEO replied. "It isn't. The bank exists to serve people, not the other way around." Several customers quietly applauded. The sound echoed through the marble lobby. Richard stood silently, realizing the applause wasn't for the CEO's title, it was for his character. The CEO returned to the counter as Emily finished processing the deposit. "Everything has been completed, sir." She handed him the receipt. He thanked her warmly. "You handled yourself professionally today." She smiled. "Thank you, sir." Before leaving, the CEO looked once more at Richard. "I'm attending tomorrow's regional leadership meeting." Richard nodded slowly. "I'll be there. I expect you to come prepared." Richard managed a weak smile. "I understand." The CEO walked toward the entrance. Just before opening the glass doors, he stopped. Without turning around, he said quietly, "You remember what I told you earlier?" Richard answered almost in a whisper, "Treat every customer with respect." The CEO smiled. "No." He turned back one final time. "Treat every person with respect, because you never know who they are." Then he walked out into the busy Chicago afternoon, leaving behind a silent branch where every employee and every customer had witnessed a lesson that would never be forgotten. The following morning, the atmosphere inside the regional headquarters was nothing like the relaxed meetings the branch managers were used to attending. Nearly 50 managers from across the Midwest sat around a large conference room, quietly reviewing quarterly reports while exchanging small talk. Coffee cups rested beside laptops, and a giant screen displayed the agenda for the day. Richard Collins sat near the back of the room. For the first time in his career, he wasn't worried about sales numbers, loan approvals, or customer growth. He was worried about facing the man he had publicly mocked less than 24 hours. Earlier, every minute felt longer than the last. At exactly 9 o'clock, the conference room doors opened. Everyone immediately stood. The CEO entered wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, looking completely different from the casually dressed man who had walked into the Chicago branch the previous afternoon. Yet his calm expression remained exactly the same. He greeted everyone politely before taking his place at the front of the room. "Good morning." "Good morning, sir," the managers answered together. The CEO smiled. "Please have a seat." The presentation began with the company's financial performance. Revenue had exceeded expectations, customer deposits had grown, and new digital services were receiving excellent reviews. The room relaxed. Many assumed the meeting would focus on numbers instead. The CEO closed the financial presentation after only 15 minutes. "I'd like to discuss something more important." The room became silent. He picked up a small folder. "Over the past month, I personally visited 22 branches without announcing my arrival." Several managers looked surprised. "I wanted to experience our bank exactly as our customers do." He paused. "I discovered something interesting." The first slide appeared on the screen. It wasn't a graph. It was a photograph of the bank lobby from Richard's branch, taken by the security cameras during the previous afternoon. No names were mentioned, no faces were highlighted, but Richard immediately recognized the moment. The CEO continued, "Our mission statement says every customer deserves dignity, honesty, and respect." He looked around the room. "Policies don't build trust, people do." The room remained completely silent. The CEO shared several examples from his unannounced visits. At one branch, an employee patiently helped an elderly veteran fill out paperwork for nearly an hour without showing the slightest frustration. At another location, a teller stayed 20 minutes after closing to help a college student whose debit card had been stolen. Those employees had never expected recognition. They simply believed helping people was part of their job. Then the CEO described another visit. He never mentioned Richard by name. Instead, he simply said, "In one branch, a customer was judged before anyone knew his story." Every manager understood the lesson immediately. The CEO looked directly toward Richard. "Our appearance often tells people where we've been. It rarely tells them who we are." Richard slowly lowered his eyes. When the presentation ended, the CEO invited everyone to take a short break. As managers gathered around the coffee station, Rich